My name's Darren Long, sales specialist, Irish accent, but based in Stockholm, covering the Swedish and the Norwegian markets. And thanks for the invite for coming along today to really discuss what we're doing. We see a lot of interesting things happening in the market. We hear these things called containers are starting to happen. You start to deploy container platforms, then you need to be able to orchestrate containers. So this thing called Kubernetes, we had a conversation before around Kubernetes. And then all of a sudden this world starts to collide a little bit, but on-premise starts to bridge towards public cloud at the same time as well. So this is our idea behind today. As Martin said before, we want to start a little bit higher. So we're going to talk a little bit about Redhat. And in perspective for that, you're a big partner with IBM. I guess IBM just paid quite a lot of money, $34 billion to buy Redhat. The transaction went through in the summer. So we're now part of IBM. But at the same time, we're also separate, run separately from IBM. So I'll try and explain that a little bit. And our idea behind today is we're going to cover off some slides, and then we're going to go deeper into the technology, as Martin said before, with Mikael, and then we're going to try and show you some of the technology and do a demo at the same time as well. So that's our plan behind today. So to answer the question, who's Redhat and why open source? The standard kind of corporate slide, if you will, but it's kind of interesting as well because this has changed a lot over the years as well. So Redhat as an organization now is coming on 14,000 people. We're actually growing very rapidly at the moment and have been for a period of time. We're actually hiring a lot more people into the organization. As IBM and Redhat start to come together, we're starting to see some quite interesting opportunities emerge. But in our own right, we're quite a sizable organization. But of course, nowhere near the size of IBM, which is give or take about 380,000 people as well. So we're smaller, we're more agile, and we have a very specific business model that 20 years ago, people thought this business model was crazy. You could never build and monetize a company like that. And I guess over the last 20 years, we've started to prove things a little bit wrong. So we're quite big. We have a lot of offices. We cover the globe. We sit in separate offices from the IBM guys, but together we work in quite a few opportunities and customers. And we have a lot of customers out there and a lot of big customers who are consuming our technology at the same time as well. So as you see, 90% of the Fortune 500. And we're a global organization. So we have revenue nowadays north of $3 billion. And if you just see the revenue stats, that's been gradually growing and growing and growing each year that's gone on. Based on a business model, which is we don't own any of our technology. Anything we buy or build ourselves, we give away to communities at the end of the day. So we have a pure open source model. So with that, Mikael, if we pass on to the next one. So, all of a sudden, we got approached by IBM, going back, give or take about a year or so ago. And I think the essence of what we're trying to do together is that, IBM sees a new market which is emerging out there. Equally, we see this cloud market which is changing and maturing nowadays, and we see a different play which is being played where we think there's going to be a much more open hybrids and a multi-cloud play behind at the same time as well. And if you boil everything down around that, IBM and Redhat together, I think we have a great opportunity to take together to both partner with the public cloud guys, but equally compete with the public cloud guys at the same time as well. So that's our mission that we're working towards, and I think we're building some interesting solutions around that as well. But to be very clear, we're still held separately as two separate organizations. We sit in separate offices. So I wanted to talk a little bit about open source, and I wanted to talk a little bit about our product development model. How can an open source company who gives away technology actually make money at the end of the day? And I think it's quite simple. In this new era that we see evolving around IT, a lot of these new platforms, we're going to talk today more about Kubernetes. A lot of these new platforms don't become standards in the industry nowadays unless you get buy-in across the industry at the same time as well. So you need a lot of participation for that to happen. So Redhat's very simple. We participate. There's many, many thousands and millions of open source projects that exist out there. We participate in those projects and those open source communities. We actually foster some of those communities in the first place because we think it's a good idea and a good way of building technology. We then take all that innovation that's happening out there around open source, we bring that together, we integrate it, and then we make it consumable for the enterprise at the same time as well. So typically, enterprise companies want longer product life cycles, more stability, they want to be dealing with fixing patches, etc. And we take that innovation and we make it consumable for medium-sized and large-sized companies as well. That's our business model. Also brings in our whole culture of kind of how we do business, because we don't just listen to the market, we actually evolve quite a lot of this at the same time as well. So the fundamentals of Redhat as an organization and these open source communities is really based around collaboration. We don't think we have the answers to every question that's out there, but together with lots of other open source participants, we think together we can build some pretty cool things. We try to share these problems, and a lot of participants in open source communities are also people in larger organizations, whether that's the IBMs of the world or the Amazons of the world or the Googles of the world. All these shared problems we can work on together to build good technology. You get much more transparency in this open source world. And then I think really what becomes quite important is building out some of these common standards and these common platforms that can emerge from open source communities as well. So bringing that a little bit more down to earth, you get all these different communities which are evolving out there. I don't know if you guys have been involved a lot in the open source communities in the past. We see lots of communities, we participate within them, we evolve, but then basically in lots of these different areas, we then take that and we make an enterprise product supplied by Red Hat. We don't supply the software because the software already exists. We then provide the support and the subscription around that to make it easily consumable for enterprises. We started this business model 20 years ago. We've evolved that over the last 20 years. And I guess in many ways, we've now seen that the market has moved in that direction. Whether you're looking at data platforms nowadays, whether you're looking at application development platforms, whether you're looking at cloud abstraction platforms, open source is starting to prevail as this key platform to build around to bring communities together. So that's our business model. This is high-level stuff. We're not getting into the technologies yet, but you know, this is what we see a lot of customers wrestling with at the same time today. And actually, this is where we start to see the container platforms really start to come towards what cloud is doing as well. Because when I was at AWS and you were working with building out new applications, typically what would happen was a lot of the lines of business would go to public cloud instead of doing this in-house. All of a sudden now you're starting to get a platform that can enable a lot of those cloud-like capabilities in-house or bridging toward public cloud as well. So we hear a lot of people saying we want to build these things called cloud-native applications, new ways of building applications and scaling applications. We have a lot of requirements. You know, data sits at the heart of our business. We want to be able to reason against that data with AI tooling and machine learning tooling. A lot of these data tool sets are now moving towards Kubernetes and OpenShift as a platform. Analytics becomes key because you know, data kind of is your business at the end of the day. And then of course, depending on what your area of business is, things like IoT, and we just find like innovation culture is a key building block. So we're not just here today to talk about a Kubernetes platform and how we compare against other Kubernetes platforms that are out there. We see that actually there's a lot of other things you need to build around this. Part of that's tooling and software, and a lot of it's also culture change. And I'm guessing you talked about that as part of your DevOps discussion this morning. A lot of this is about organizational change, new processes, new ways of doing things, and new skill sets and mindsets within your organization. So we just see this as like an enablement platform, an enablement way of doing things. But when you boil it all down to very simple things like containers, new ways of spinning up applications very rapidly with all the dependencies within that applications. There used to be arguments in the past about which way of orchestrating these containers. Is it going to be Docker Swarm? Is it going to be other formats? I don't know. My opinion is all those discussions have pretty much stopped, and Kubernetes is becoming the standardized platform for doing that. So look, this is nearly the end of the high-level element because all this stuff sounds okay, but what does the technology look like? We're going to come to that with Mikael in a little while. But at a very simple level, this is why customers choose Red Hat OpenShift. You know, we see this standardized platform that we talked about that Red Hat's played a big role and is a big contributor towards that ecosystem called Kubernetes. It's happening everywhere. Containers are happening everywhere. Building net new applications are happening everywhere. Kubernetes is the abstraction platform. So we build that and we build this trusted enterprise version of that. That in turn, and we're going to go into more detail, starts to give you this common experience whether you run that on AWS or Azure or IBM clouds or Google clouds. All of a sudden you have this common natural abstraction layer for public clouds. That's all great. You can provide them this beautiful platform, but actually your IT guys will be consuming this, but your developers absolutely have to consume it at the same time. History tells us, and we have a lot of experience, if you provide this platform and you don't provide the developer services for this platform, you're not going to get a lot of applications on this platform. And those application people will move towards public cloud instead. So all these little things that we see up here, whether this is Spring Java applications, we're seeing technologies like Kafka, event-based streaming, and streaming data platforms emerging in. These are all toolings that developers want and would like to choose to be able to build those on top of the platform. Wouldn't it be cool if you could have a common platform that could do that, independent of clouds? that could be operated and lifecycle managed in some different ways. So we're going to talk about things like Kubernetes operators, yeah? How you take complex applications, deploy them on that, but lifecycle manage them as well, but really bring a wide ecosystem of different toolings towards developers as well. So all of that, but at the same time built on all these open source communities that are out there as well. So taking the strength and the speed and the agility of open source, but really making that consumable for the enterprise. That's what OpenShift is. We've been doing it for a long time. We've been really successful. And IBM is now also taking that and building a lot of their capabilities on top of that as well. You know, if we start off at high level, because, you know, I was like most people, I guess, in the past, as I used to always sell and work with, you know, IT infrastructure guys. That's where the budget lay. Those are the people that had it. They had to maintain uptime, etc. But in this new world, all of a sudden, these crazy developer guys are having much, much more say within organizations. And in the digital era, developing applications and deploying applications very rapidly, that's the game. You know, I was with a bank in Stockholm maybe 3 months ago, and they turned around and basically said, we're becoming a software company. We're a software company focused on financial services, but when you boil it down, we're a software company. So we need to know how to attract developers, retain developers. We need really good tooling. And we need this common platform that we can enable them to onboard very quickly, build applications, and then deploy them quickly at the same time as well. So things are changing. So if we think about that, let's just think very simply on 4 different layers. You know, if you're a developer, those ways of developing applications have changed. It used to be in the past, we would go through a waterfall way of developing things. All of a sudden, you would build up all these requirements. You would test all of those, and very slowly you would deploy them. We moved much more towards agile teams. Of course, this concept of DevOps, which really came from the West Coast of the US and the big cloud guys like Googles of this world. This is changing the way we do this. And a lot of this, of course, is about quality and time to market as well. So things are changing within that because, of course, in the digital era, we can't wait a long time to develop, deploy, and test applications. A competitor could come out tomorrow with new capabilities. You need to be able to react to that at the same time as well. So IT architectures are changing. Application architectures are also changing from monolithic architectures. We needed to get more agility behind those monolithic architectures, breaking them into single tiers. And we're starting to move towards a world nowadays that it would be really interesting if we can take those big application sets and break them into lots of small pieces and then have individual teams working against those small pieces. It means we can iterate much more quickly, but it means we can test and deploy much more rapidly at the same time as well. So this concept of microservices has really taken off. Once again, came from the West Coast of the US. All the big web scale companies, or even the Spotify of this world, have been all into microservices for years. And enterprises, of course, are having to catch up at the same time as well. Often we have the conversation, we're not ready for microservices, but we're ready for mini services. So new platforms need to be able to support this. Infrastructure is changing as well. We know that move from physical infrastructure towards virtualized infrastructure. And then all of a sudden in this new world, you know, let's think about, you know, someone like Google nowadays, they spin up and down billions of containers every day. Even when I open up my banking application, I still bank somewhat back in the UK. Everything spins up within a container at the same time as well. So new ways of packaging and deploying applications are really important. And equally, infrastructure has been changing as well from very static-based infrastructure to much more dynamic. And then back in 2006, this crazy company called Amazon started to change how we really build and consume infrastructure as well. And that's why, as part of that, cloud permeates pretty much every conversation that we have. So if we think about that, this is 4 different layers. It doesn't mean that every customer or every partner needs to be there. But I think it's fair to say this is a movement which is happening out there across the IT industry. And people think the further that we can get down there, the more valuable IT can be to the business and the more quickly we can build things and react to things as well. There's a lot of stuff to cover, I guess, in quite a short period of time. But you know, my point being in this is we see a shift happening within the market. A lot of people deploy Kubernetes platforms, and then they get stuck as a CAS platform. We had a bank in Stockholm. We had exactly this conversation with about 4 months ago. We've deployed a CAS solution. It's not doing anything. It's not giving us anything to developers. And they're making this move because we need these services towards developers as well. So anyone who's already using Kubernetes today or starting to look at Kubernetes, I would just say take the learning lessons from the market as well. As this thing evolves, you're going to have to move up the stack and you're going to have to be able to build a lot of these services on top. Red Hat can help you with some of those services. IBM can help you with a lot of those services, but equally we have this third-party ecosystem that really gives you a very open ecosystem to pull against. So that's, at a high level, is how containers meet cloud in an open hybrid multi kind of cloud ecosystem.